Hello folks, my name is Leah Bonasaki from Master Lab Systems. Okay, today we'll be looking at deploying serverless APIs with Python FastAPI and AWS Lambda. So this is a step-by-step guide for using Serverless Framework on AWS free account. Okay, so let's go ahead folks. Okay, so today we'll be looking at how to prepare a FastAPI application for AWS Lambda using the Serverless Framework for deployment, configuring the IAM credentials for deployment, and lastly deploy to AWS and test our live API. Okay, so let's look at first what is serverless. Serverless is a mean of no server provisioning or maintenance. Basically, it's a use of deploying your applications without having to provision any bare metal server or any physical server or a virtual server for that matter. So automatically, serverless scales up automatically based on the demand of your API. So the more your API or more your app is on demand or more requests coming to your application, the more resources will be scaled. It will be scaled based on your demand. That's what it means. And also you pay for what you are using on serverless, meaning you don't pay for anything else but only the resources your application is using. And it is quietly perfect for microservices and APIs. Okay, so let's look at the basic structure that we need for preparing our application before we deploy it on AWS Lambda. Okay, so we have, for example, this basic application for Python, which contains a package that has about one main file for Python, and another file that we require, it's going to be the handler file. So with the handler, we also require the handler and a serverless for serverless framework configuration and a file for requirements. So in this case, it's a requirement.txt, so which is also a good use, but let's look at how we will get that in our project, in our own project. Okay, so this is the only code that we require for the handler. So again, the handler is just the file that will expose or allows our app endpoint to be exposed outside of AWS Lambda. Okay, and lastly, since I'm using Poetry for dependency manager, so with Poetry, which you will be also seeing in a minute. So you init a project and then you add your dependencies and then you get your project. So again, once you create your project, you install the serverless framework. From installing it, you configure it. However, by default, if your AWS CLI is already configured in your local, it will automatically connect to it. Okay, so and lastly, you install the plugin and you do the deploy, you get your application. Okay, folks, without wasting any much time, let's go ahead and create our project. So again, I'm using Linux for creating, I'm using Linux in general. So at my site, your case, probably if you are on Windows or on Mac, it might be slightly different, but on Unix systems, it's normally the case. So for instance, if you when you have already installed Poetry, because since I'm using Poetry, so I'd also strongly recommend that you also use Poetry. Okay, so with Poetry, to initiate a new project, this is what we do. So Poetry new, create your project, and then once you click enter, it will automatically create a project, and then from there you set it to your project, set it FastAPI, you set it to it, which is again what type down at my side. So from here it will automatically show you, it will give you something like this. If I do a list, so you, at this case, you're not gonna be seeing your serverless and your node modules because of we haven't installed the serverless framework. So this is what you should be seeing in this case, only just a basic Python file with no file. So again, we'll be creating this. So we should be seeing an empty and with this project as a dependency file. So from here, now you need to install or you add your dependencies, since it's we need to create an API. So those dependencies would mean, so if I do an add, so again with Poetry, it makes it simpler to easy to manage and add those dependencies. So again, to add those, you would do Poetry add, the number, which is the what AWS will be using for deployment. You add that, you add FastAPI as well as for the framework, you add UVCon for the web server. Okay, and once you do this, if you do an enter, in my case I've already done the process, so of course it should show me now that those are already present in my project. So it's keeping those, as you can see, it's keeping those because they already exist. So in your case, you will see those automatically once you run that command. So from here, now we can add a basic API. So let's go ahead, let's go to this package, which is FastAPI demo. If I do narrate, okay, so in your case, simply you just create a new file called main. So you create a Python file called main, which is already created in my case, but it's still empty. So as well, you create another one which is called handler. Again, it's still empty as well. So let's go ahead and add. And last file that you also create, it's serverless. So as well, it's empty, which is we will be adding some code in it. So let's first start again with the main and add a very basic REST endpoint. So if I copy that in here, so let's copy, add this REST endpoint, let's click save. Let's add another second one, for instance. So if I copy this, just gonna add another REST endpoint. So say this one, it's hello. So maybe say, instead of saying read root, so it's gonna say hello. So let's say hello, so meaning add /hello. This is what you should be getting. So again, let's just change the message to testing. So instead of saying hello again, maybe let's say now testing from AWS Lambda. Okay, now that we have that in there, so now we have two get endpoints. So again, let's add now the handler. Okay, so adding the handler, now basically they've said the handler, it's only nothing much but just a handler to expose our endpoints on AWS. So this is only the minimum code we require for handler. So as well, we are importing from main to specify we are only require what as the app. Okay, so we have that in there. So again, let's run the project just to test if we can get at least those endpoints that we just created before we do a deployment. Okay, so to run that, I would use poetry run. So with poetry, you can simply just run your application. So of course, the file we want to invoke, it's in this package, which is the main file. It's in this package, so it's important that we first, if we are not inside it, the package, we have to call it, so it can be able to know where the file we're invoking is. So if we do enter now, so let's give it some time while it's starting up. Okay, so it is started successfully, folks. Let's go ahead and test it. Okay, as you can see, that's what we are getting. So hello from FastAPI, which is the first endpoint. So now if we go to this one /hello, which is fine as well, testing from AWS Lambda. Okay, so we will be deploying this endpoint, folks. Okay, so once we have that in here, now again, let's go now and stop, since we don't want any interference when we are deploying this to AWS Lambda. Okay, so here we have our configuration. Well, we have our handler and our main file. So now let's add our serverless configuration. Okay, so as I said, serverless configuration will only work if you have Node.js because it relies on Node. So if you don't have Node, I'd strongly suggest that you first ensure that you have Node installed. So using the command to install Node.js. So you can do, since I'm on Linux, but ensure that you have Node installed, and once you've installed it, ensure that you are on the latest version. As you can see in my case, if I do a Node-V, it gives me the latest version of Node.js. So once you install Node.js, you will have to now install the serverless framework, as I've shown you here and in my slides, that once you install Node.js, so now this is the command, and since Node.js will give you the ability to use npm, so npm, it's a package manager for Node.js. So once you install Node.js, you will be able to use npm to install the serverless framework. So from installing the so this is the command as well that you would have to use to install the serverless framework. So this command, it simply only works, of course, while you have installed npm and Node.js. So first you install Node.js and now install serverless using npm from Node.js. So again, once you have installed it, you should be seeing this version now. So if I do serverless-v, I should be getting the latest version for serverless framework. So let's test that as well. Okay, as you can see, folks, installed version serverless framework when you get this version. So now again, ensure that your AWS account, meaning if you ensure you have installed your CLI, your AWS CLI, since the serverless framework, you will be using it to deploy to AWS Lambda. Okay, so now to test that you have installed it successfully and you can connect it to your AWS console account. So you can do another command to test that, so which is if I do AWS S3 list. So basically, of course, sometimes you might not get the correct results due to some permissions due to some IAM permissions on AWS. But if you have the administrative permissions for your account, then you should be seeing this. For example, it should give you a list of your available buckets, storage buckets on AWS. So in my case, I only got this one, which is what I will be using to deploy this project. So now, automatically at this stage, serverless framework will be able to connect to AWS account using the AWS CLI. However, sometimes it might require you to automatically have an account here, so which is still fine, and also it's not doing anything because at backend it will be using your AWS credentials. However, just this dashboard, sometimes it does like to throw in by requiring you to create an account, which is a basic account though, that you don't even really use it. As you can see in my case, I'm not using this account, just no deployments, because of I will be deploying to AWS console, not on this dashboard that you are seeing here. Just a note as well. Okay, I'm gonna close that, which is fine. So we can get the project, so that's fine as well. So now from here, what we need now, we tested the configuration, if it works for the serverless. So now let's add the serverless configuration, which is now what should expose our application out of AWS environment. So this is what should track our application when we make new changes. So using this way, I would strongly like to give you a quick brief as well. So again, this file, it's what the serverless framework uses to track new changes and deploy accordingly. So again, we define the service name, we define the provider, which is AWS, runtime, Python 3.9, because of this project uses 3.9 Python. Again, to double check that, you should be seeing here if you're using Poetry, it will give you what Python version is your project uses. So again, 3.9, so hence you see 3.9 in the serverless file. So region, we specify US East, which is the default region. Again, functions, meaning application functions. So you can have as much events as you can, meaning as much function as you can, but again, it will make your file messy, so it's important. So I would rather than use this way that I've commanded, which is what I will unhash now. So again, if you have one endpoint of your application, it's okay to use this way, which is the path and the method get, meaning in this case I'm only calling this endpoint, meaning at the root endpoint, at the root, this is what it needs to serve. So again, at the root, I'm only exposing that endpoint. But now, imagine you have multiple endpoints. It will be messy to you and tedious to do that. So meaning you would rather have to do this way, since this way will take care of all your endpoints and ensure that all of those are available. You can still get them. So using this way will give you the ability to get all your endpoint on your application, no matter how much they are. So now you have that configuration in here. So now we need to install the serverless plugin, so we can be able to keep track of the changes, which comes in now by unpacking these node modules. As I said, the serverless framework uses what? Node.js. So it's important that we have already installed Node.js. Okay, let's go ahead and install the serverless plugin so we can start our deployment. Okay, so again, ensure that you are on your project environment or on your root directory from project. So ensure you are on this path, for example. So now the command to do that, to install serverless, to install the plugin. Okay, so this is the command you would need. So using this command will install the serverless library and gives you all and unpack all those node modules in your project. So once you do this, since in my case already I've installed it, as I said, ensure that when you are running it, you are inside your root project directory. So meaning you are also now using serverless. So by running sls plugin install -n serverless Python requirements, it will install the plugin and unpack all of these node modules, package.json, serverless by default for you. Once it unpack those, it will mean now you are ready to do a deploy. So to do a deploy would mean now you are doing what? Serverless deploy. Simply just serverless deploy. It will deploy your application on AWS. So now, however, this will take some time. So let me hit enter while I'm explaining it. So basically now what it means, it will first authenticate to my AWS account on my console. From authenticating it, build the project. From building it, create some packages, meaning package it. After packaging it, upload it to my S3 account. So it will upload the whole process. It's using CloudFormation for this automated deployment. It's using CloudFormation, so as well, and of course your S3, since it's uploading those packages to S3 storage. Of course, we'll be looking at those as well. So as you can see now, it's packaging one or more. It's packaging your project, the project. Okay, so after the packaging, it will try to upload. So let's give it some time while it's doing that. Once it finalizes deploying, it will give us an endpoint where we should be accessing the application. So of course, this is local, as you can see, local. So I will close local since we don't want local, and close this one as well. So now once it finishes, it will upload those in here. And as I said, it's using CloudFormation for the whole automated deployment and uploading those to S3. It's using CloudFormation with the right IAM account, IAM credentials account, IAM permissions. Okay, so let's check again. Okay, now it's uploading the source maps to S3 using CloudFormation. Okay, as you can see, updating it the CloudFormation stack. Okay, so once it finishes, it will automatically give us an endpoint where we will be getting our endpoint. Okay, give it some time. Again, if you struggling to set this up, which is the serverless framework and the AWS CLI, I will create a new tutorial just to ensure the whole end-to-end setup, and also creating a free tier account on AWS console. Okay, anyway folks, that is already completed now, so we should be able, this is the endpoint, that's where our application is accessible on. So now sweet, there we go folks. As you can see, hello from FastAPI on AWS Lambda. So now, as you can see, the endpoint, it's running on AWS. So meaning now as well, if now we're to test the second one, so as you can see, let's test again the second one. Okay, so hello from FastAPI on AWS Lambda. So if now we do the hello, which is if we go to the second endpoint, which is hello, sweet, as you can see folks, testing from AWS Lambda. So both our endpoints we can get those successfully fine. Same goes if we were to remove one endpoint. Removing it will simply mean, if I just go again to our main, let's just remove even this one, the hello. So if you remove this one, you add a new one, for instance, you probably might want to add another one. So again, you'd want, maybe your question would be, how do you ensure that you get new changes up again? So simple, if you remove or you add a new one, you add it there, nothing else you need to modify. Your serverless config is all good, your handler it's fine. So you simply again do an serverless deploy. It will deploy the new changes on your project. So by doing that, it means now we are getting rid of the second endpoint, which is if now once it finishes deploying, it means we won't be able to access it anymore. Though sometimes it takes a while to upload, but let's give it some time. As you can see, so this one by default now, after this deployment that we are making here, it won't be accessible anymore. Same goes if you were to add a new endpoint and you want to deploy it. So it simply means you just do a serverless deploy. In this case, it means now you are not worrying about server side work, getting you don't worry about creating Docker files, about setting up infrastructure, resources. So that's why serverless is the way to go now. It makes the work so much easier rather than worrying about creating configurations, having configuration issues according to different environments. So it makes it very, very easier to use. Okay, so now that's finalizing the upload now. So once we have this, again, as you can see, it's finalizing the upload. So it means now folks, this endpoint will be read, which is the second endpoint, we won't be getting it anymore. So again, while we are waiting it, okay, let's see, seems to have, okay, it's finalizing. So again, from here, we have that in here. So we have all our slides folks in place. So now let's just give it one last minute before I end the session. Again folks, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the comment section. I will be answering those. Also for one-on-ones, if you require some one-on-one session, you can send a message, you can email my channel, and we'll be able to answer you and help you accordingly. So as you can see folks, it is already successfully finished. So let's go ahead and test the second endpoint. Okay, so as I said, sometimes it does take a little bit of a while, but let's just check. As you can see, there we go, immediately not found since we have removed it. So same way, if we add a new endpoint, it was simply going to deploy it with simple. You don't have to wait until you have a release card to get your changes deployed. Right away, your changes can go to production. Simple, with no hassles. Okay folks, I think I will be ending here for today. Please, if you have any comments, drop them in the comment section. I will answer those. If you need the source code, you need assistance in anything, please feel free to DM. Otherwise, if you like this video, please like and share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you folks, until next time. Cheers, peace.